All right, welcome today to another episode of Duckman TV. Got a special guest on today. So some people in the football world would know this man, Daniel Payne. Dan Payne's the head of Dan's Collectables and NRL. You can buy all sorts of memorabilia off Dan. Big football card collector and other sorts of memorabilia. He's written a couple of books. Got one behind him there, Rugby League's Heroes of Yesterday. That's his second book. And he's got a very interesting story to tell. It would be good for a lot of collectors, a lot of guys out there to spend a lot of money on collectible stuff. And this guy's the king of the pile for people that I know in the NRL and everything like that. Dan, thanks for your time today. Welcome on Duckman TV.
Thanks for having me on Duckman TV.
So you've got an interesting life. So most boyhood dreams are to collect football cards, but probably with the aspiration they'd love to have the dream of probably getting to NRL there one day themselves. So you get the cards and get to see all your favorite heroes and that stuff, and hope one day you'll have one yourself. So you ever play rugby league when you were young before it kicked off?
I did at Ingleburn, but I wasn't very good. I was out on the wing picking flowers and out off with the fairies. I wasn't a very good football player, but I really loved the game. A lot of things about it, I think probably a big part of it was the association with friends and uncles and people like that, and you just talk football and watch football. So my family had a lot of rugby league tragics. So yeah, I think that's where the love of it sort of started.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. So that's how most people always get started. They play park footy, play their mates, or maybe play club football. I never played club football as a junior as such, but I was playing at school and in the afternoons before the school. And I used to get in the habit, I know you probably did, I had mates that did, we'd be playing footy and you'd be commentating things that you're doing while you're out there. Oh, he puts a chip and chase over the top and the step on. So when you're going to get tries, get all excited about it. So you're trying to be like your heroes. So I'm sure you had that in your day when you were playing.
Yeah, I remember we used to pretend to be different players and different teams. So, my mate would say he's Kevin Hastings and I'd say I was Brett Kenny. So there was a bit of that.
Yeah. I like the jersey you got on there too, the Hunter Mariners. So how long have you had that? So how did you pick that up? And
not long. This is Justin Dooley's. So
yep.
Yeah, so it's one of the only jerseys that I've got from other ex-players and that actually fits me. Like, Justin Dooley, was a double XL, big fella, big front row, and it fits me. But I've got a few other jerseys, like, you can't see it, but I've got Larry Corra's 1978 New South Wales jersey, pre-State of Origin. So he was only a little fella, and I've got a couple of jerseys from Mick Delroy, Parramatta, and got an Aboriginal, World Sevens 1996 jersey. So yeah, I've got a few game worn jerseys. I think they're always special to get something like that.
Yeah, that's good. So Justin Dooley, for people who might not know, played Souths too, didn't he? As well as West and Hunter Mariners.
Yeah, and a good cricket player from what I've heard. And for the jersey, I'll have him over here one day, and we'll have quite a few beers and just talk about football one afternoon.
There you go. That's a good story to tell. So how did you get started in the whole collectibles thing anyway? You just started off as a kid collecting footy cards, and when did you realise it was going to be more than that?
Well, I think as a kid, I was collecting them. I'd get my lunch money and go to the shops and buy a packet of Scanlon's bubblegum cards, and I was always interested in them. I remember seeing, I think it was about 1981, I saw some at a school fete. They had the cards from the previous year, and I thought, oh, they look interesting, and try to work out who they are. But I think it really kicked off when I was in year 7, and this other kid was knocking off his father's collection of cards. He'd bring me in a pile like this every day, and I'd give him my $3 or $2 lunch money, and they were all cards from the 60s and 70s, and so I was putting them together, trying to work out what year they were, all from and everything like that. And I think I was just very fascinated, like the 70s jerseys. I remember Bob McCarthy he's standing there with the South Sydney jersey on, and it was just interesting.
Yeah,
it grew from that.
That's good. That's the way I think it starts for most people. They just start, like I said, start to follow their boyhood heroes and that stuff and want to follow them. I had aspirations. I wanted to play in the NRL and hope to have my own footy card. Then you knew you'd made it if you have footy cards and stuff like that. And it's just, you see so many people around. So like I said, Bobby McCarthy was South, went to Canterbury too at the very end of his career, didn't he? Pretty sure he ended up there.
Yeah, that's right. But it's funny you say that about the footy cards, because in my books, because I generally interview these heroes yesterday, I interview 30 players for one book. And one question I do ask them is if they collected football cards, and just about all of them did, even whether it was in the 60s or 70s or 80s, depends on how old they are. But, a lot of them say it was a bit of a thrill when they got their own football card, and then kids would come up asking them to sign it. So, it's pretty relevant. I think it's really, football cards is something that once kids get hold of footy cards, it really ingrains in them it starts off their interest for the sport. So I think it's very important, especially when we were kids. We didn't have all the tablets and all the devices that they have now. So, you'd have your footy cards. It was pretty exciting.
That's right. That's why I saw footy cards back in the day when, I started collecting in probably 85, 86, when I was about 8 or 9, I suppose. I was following footy a little bit before that. And we didn't have Foxtel and all that. That wasn't around. There's only had football on Channel 2, and you'd have Channel 10 game of the round on Sunday afternoon, or Channel 9 as it swapped between the different channels. And I remember Graham Hughes calling the 1991 grand final when Penrith beat Canberra, and that was massive because it went right to the wire till Royce scored the extra try at the end of the game. So off the short dropout from Scott Gale, so that was like a highlight. And even that day, the football cards all over the ground, playing little games against each other, and it's just different. So it was good. But it helped people to get to know all the players too. Now you can tap on anything, tap on your phone, and you can pull up all these stats about players. Back in the day, they used to have jobs and have information about what they did for a job and where they're from, all on the back of these footy cards. So it's one way to get to know a little bit about the guys. So
well, it is,
obviously, you started collecting footy cards. When did you start collecting the memorabilia with it as well? So it's just as a young guy sort of started going hand in hand together and that sort of stuff?
No, probably not really. Trying to think when it was mainly as a kid and teenager, it was mainly football cards and the magazines, all the programs that you could get. I'd collect all those, but all the memorabilia sort of happened fairly recently, I think. Where this bar actually came from, I got this sign from Cumberland Oval, which the laptop's sitting on, and I ended up building the bar around that. And then I think the memorabilia, I had bits and pieces and stuff, but it really took off once I started to get to know a lot of the players and, would work something out. And but I don't know, there's just so many different things. I just, it's like a bit of an addiction, just it grows and grows. And then you think, well, I've made a full room into just a shrine of rugby league memorabilia.
Yeah.
So where it started, I can't even answer it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a spectacular collection. I looked at your stuff online, what you've got for sale. Like you got it running sort of as a bit of a marketable business too. If people need bits and pieces, whenever I'm looking for things to top up collections, I'm always jumping on your site to have a look what there is. And I've asked you before about buying Super League cards and different sorts of bits and pieces that they're just genuinely hard to come across, some of the stuff. So it's just, it's interesting. So when did you realize it could become more than just a hobby, just with the football cards and even the memorabilia obviously been recently, so you're well entrenched in what you're doing with football cards by that time?
Well, I think I started buying cards like when we're talking 20 years ago. So it was Select was the company running the cards. So I'd buy a box, and then the box grew into a case, which is 12 boxes, and then I'd sell the extras on eBay. And then that grew to buying 2 or 3 cases. And then it got to a stage where I thought that eBay I didn't really like it. There was a lot of fees involved, and you sort of, like your business is up there against everyone else. So I thought, well, it's probably time to try to make my own website. So that's, I'm pretty sure it's about 20 years ago, got that website going. And, you know, it takes a little while and you need to get customers to come to you and the traffic and stuff like that. So it does take a while to get your own website going, but once it's going, it's all right. So yeah, that's how it started with just, you know, because I'd buy the cards for me and then I'd sell the rest. But then it got to a stage where I was buying 5 or 6 or 7 cases. So that's, you know, do the math, it's 12 boxes to a case. It's quite a lot of cards. But then I also would buy people's collections as well. So that was also the primary reason would be to fill up my collection. But then the rest of it, once I've got one of a card, I generally put the rest in my website and sell those. So yeah, it just grows and grows like anything.
That's a good way to manage it and how you did that. So I actually was going through transition from the 80s, and that was a school, 90s is still at school till the mid 90s, and I wouldn't say I died off collecting them, but it got harder to buy. The football cards were starting to go up from 20 to 40 cents a packet to a couple of bucks, $4 or $5 a packet. And then I started to look at the value. Oh, hang on, you can go to a collector card shop, which there's not many of them around anymore. You go to some collector or memorabilia shop and buy a set for like 20 to 40 bucks. And, oh, that's a good value. And then realized, oh, you can buy boxes and you get a whole set in the box and maybe nearly another whole set or individual cards, and you can get that. I started to do the same thing for a little while, but it wasn't something I wanted to sink a lot of time into trying to offsell the other cards. So I suppose the rise of the internet as well helped to grow that. So it was it's a good tool. And some of that, it killed off. There were a lot of old guys who were collecting footy cards back in the day that ran these footy card shops and memorabilia shops. They used to go in there and look at everything. The one at Penrith I went to, the guy used to sell Star Trek cards and all sorts of things, cricket cards.
Yeah,
and
it'd be like a big event going to the card shop, wasn't it? Like,
absolutely. So they've
so the internet's definitely changed it all. Yeah.
Have you ever gone to any of the collector memorabilia shows? They got them around and that stuff. You ever thought about taking any of your collection out and about? So from purposes selling and building what you've got, like you got a pretty good reputation within rugby league. You're very well known with what you do. So,
well, I've been to a couple of card shows in the past, but I just found it was like you're online. So I was online. I had a lot of stock, and then I'd go to a card show and I'd sell certain things, and then I remember thinking, oh, it'd be out of stock. It'd be in stock on my website, but I'd sold it at the card show. So I found it a bit hard, and it's actually a pretty big day. So, you know, my hat goes off to these guys who go to these card shows because it's a big day, and sometimes you don't make much money, and sometimes you make a bit of money. But yeah, it's a big day setting all your stuff up just for one day, and then you're dealing with customers, and you know, so I've had my go at doing them, but yeah, I think I just don't have enough time as well.
Yeah. So what do you do for your normal job outside of all of this? Because obviously hobbies and collectibles, I really looked at in the 90s, I could get a footy card shop or buy one of the memorabilia shops off someone that had it. And it just looked like a bit of needed to have something else going as well, because when it was quiet, have quiet times, you'd be quiet when school holidays and that stuff, you'd be pumping and you could smoke heaps of stuff out. When did that?
I don't think there'd be too many guys who could make it their full-time business or income. Like for me, I'm a surveyor by trade, so I go out do survey work all the time, and having a website's good because it runs in the background. You can sell things, and then just when you get time, you print off your orders and pack them up and send them. So yeah, I think if you did it full time, it would probably be fairly stressful as well. So it's good to do it as a part-time thing.
Yeah. So when did you start really engaging with the players and that sort of stuff? Because people may or may not know you do podcasts and interviews. You've done bits and pieces of stuff for the Sunday roast and the footy show and that in the past, and you would be right up there with David Middleton and that stuff, is probably a football boffin and a bit of a subject matter expert in the field, particularly collectibles and memorabilia and stuff like that. So, how did that evolve?
Well, I was looking at a big league one day, and I saw this, like they used to do the interviews. Like it was I remember it was Bruce Clark, Bruiser, and they just had a one-page interview in the big league mag. And I was saying to my son, "Do you think I should do something like this?" And he said, "Yeah." So originally I was doing these interviews with players, and they were very simple, but I was just putting them in my website. And I got to a stage where there was probably 50, 30, 40 interviews in there of different players. And I went and interviewed Robbie O'Davis, and the interview was fairly full on, like took me by surprise a bit. And there was a few very full on things in that interview. And I just got to the stage where I thought the interviews started becoming better than just sticking them on the internet. So I think that's where the idea came to do these Heroes Yesterday books. Because once you get a rapport with people, and generally, some they'll have a good word for you for someone else, and that's how you meet someone else, and it all just all grows. So I think that's how it's happened for me. And also probably having the Facebook page, which was originally Dan's NRL Collectables just for my shop, but there's 30,000 people in there, and they're all sort of guys like you and me who are just football fanatics. And there's a lot of ex-players as well, and I think a lot of people probably don't even know I've got a shop. That's how the page is run. It's just a group for people to interact with football players and football nuts, and especially people who like the olden days of rugby league. So just having the community.
One thing I like
meeting more.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I like how you've set up your shop and your website, because you've got the interaction of footballers, and you gain that over years from building respect and having a good reputation. And like footballers, I've seen people that like to try to be sneaky and tricky and ambush the guys and make them look stupid and that. And I don't buy into that at all, but the guys feel comfortable in that. They come on the site and you interact with former players or guys that were heroes back in the day, and they're all pretty happy to have a bit of a chat and tell you a little bit about what they did.
The secret is we've got a fairly strong admin team as well, and I think there's a very low tolerance for fools. So as soon as there's someone who's fairly rude or being sneaky, as you said, and trying to bait someone, especially like if it's an ex-player or something, and have a go at them. Like, someone might have played 10 years and all they do is bring up the one negative thing. Well, actually, I don't think we need those sort of people in the group anyway, because if they're that negative on life, they're not really going to contribute much to the page. So I'm very happy just to kick people out straight away. And then that platform is a much more positive space if you get rid of people like that. Yeah, so I think that's a big key to it.
Yeah, everyone's there for all the right reasons. So they're there because they love football, got an interest in collecting memorabilia, and get to interact with these guys that were like once upon a time, like yesterday's hero as such. So it's good. So if you've ever done stuff, I would be proud to even play one NRL game or anything. That would have been like a highlight of my life to be able to do that. So speaking to these guys who are happy to give their time up, that's a good thing. So. What's the greatest piece of memorabilia you reckon that you've ever collected? Anything, if you could put it.
I'd say this is up there. This is the first ever Dally M trophy that was issued.
Yeah.
That's Percy Knights. That was issued as because Balmain was the first team read out in alphabetical order, so he was the club favourite player. So that's a very special piece for me. Just trying to think. I think like a lot of the jerseys I've got a trunk from Harry Sunderland when he was the club manager of Australia, and they took the ship over to England. So I've got his trunk. Like I was saying before, the Cumberland Oval sign here is a very nice thing. But I like a lot of things. I like a lot of the simple things as well. But probably my Rugby League week and big league collections, things I really like. And another thing I've been getting into is the bound volumes of Rugby League news and big league. I've got a few from the 1920s and 30s and not many from the 40s. But you go through those and you have a look at it captures history, and those sort of bound volumes the internet doesn't cover it. It's not there. And the way we're going now, I think it's pretty scary without having many paper sort of products anymore, and it's all on the internet. I think it's maybe 10 years time we're going to look back and say what actually happened there, because there's not going to be a lot of information. And also with websites can just shut down one day, and like the guy might get upset and get cranky with the world, and he might have had a really good website with all statistics and just shut it down. So I think it's very important having the paper products. And to go back through like a 1940s bound volume, it's and just even the language they used when they spoke was completely different to today. They could say words, and nowadays, it's, you're not allowed to say it anymore. So, I think I really love the history of the game and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So how did you come about getting those bound volumes? Because I've researched like just the history of the game, history of rugby union and different bits and pieces, how it all began, went back to when William Webb Ellis picked up a ball at rugby school in Warwickshire and all this and mythology around that, then how rugby kicked off in 1838, become the Rugby Football Union and Rugby League in 1870, the test matches, then rugby league become Northern Rugby Football Association or whatever it was. And how did they ever come about? You come across that, because that is the hardest material to find, stuff from the 20s and 30s, like any sort of print material at all.
Well, I think they sort of come to me these days. I'm endlessly getting people saying they've got this collection or they've got this and that, and they want to sell it or ask me how much something's worth. I think especially since the show with Andrew Voss. So I'm constantly getting people asking or trying to sell things or to find out what it's worth. So I don't actually look too much myself. They sort of appear, and then I have a look and think whether I want it or if I don't, or maybe I know a lot of other collectors and they might be interested. So I help people out that way. They can sell things, through people that I know as well. But yeah, it is very special to get hold of. The 1920s bound volumes I only got hold of in the last 6 months. So that was, very interesting.
It's pretty spectacular. It held in pretty high reverence to get some of that stuff, because like I said, to keep the records and be entrusted with keeping the records and the history of the game, like, so one day we won't be paper articles getting printed out. Everything will be digital. If we lose what we've got in print, all it takes is someone go, yeah, that chapter 100 years ago of rugby league is a little bit irrelevant, so we just stored it on some zip drive somewhere, stored in the National Archives. You won't even be able to access it easy anymore. Like, I've seen people archive stuff. I've written articles that have gone into different papers and that stuff. After 3 years, they get archived. You can't even find them anymore. They're just gone.
They're gone. Yeah, it is pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's been the greatest influence on your career as rugby league enthusiast and collector?
I don't know. I think my late Nan, because I remember being a kid and I'd go to her house at Hurstville, and she was a mad St. George supporter, and she would have rugby league weeks and from the 70s. And like, I'm talking, I was, about 1983 when I was in year 3, or even around those sort of ages. And I used to love going through them. And she had the Saint magazine, the big one. And so, and we would watch football games together, and she was very fanatical, but she was a St. George supporter. I was Parramatta. But I think, she's probably my main influence. And, we were doing family tipping comps all the way up until she passed away in the 90s. So, and she used to go to a lot of the games at Cogra and all around the place, wearing all the St. George gear. So, I think a lot of it's come from that, just being a fanatic like her.
Yeah. I know my dad's auntie, she used to live back in Farrell back in the day. We never used to go down there too much, but I've got a bit of a passion for following Illawarra, because this is only in the early 80s. So they were just coming through And yeah, seeing guys like Michael Bolton, Alan McIndoe, Perry Haddock had gone from St George to Illawarra, obviously, and they were growing, and it was pretty exciting. And they were sponsored by BHP, and you could see where BHP was, and the area stunk really bad because it had that whole methane smell from the steel smelter. But it was good. So, and the older people, they were passionate. My grandparents and that, they were super passionate about the sport. So I can completely understand how you're coming from. And when I went for Penrith, and my grandparents were like staunch Parramatta fans, when I moved up to Penrith, I went, I'm going to start going for them. I was about 9 or probably a little bit younger. And it's like I divorced my grandparents. It was hard for them to understand. So, but
well, I think people are more loyal to their football team than anyone else in life or their partners or anything. Because it doesn't matter what happens, they'll still go for South Sydney or St George or Penrith all the way up until they die. So it is a very strong bond with people in their football club.
Yeah. Can you show everyone the beer? You're having a beer today out of a Billy Smith.
Yeah, I'm having because I interviewed Billy Smith recently, and actually we made these stubby coolers with Billy Smith, and we had a few beers with him, and told his story in Heroes Yesterday, book 2, and probably the funniest thing he told us was about when he got sacked from St George, and that was at a Penfolds function, and he came back dripping wet. He'd stole the minibus, the Penfolds minibus, and came back and told them that he drove the minibus into the lake on the ground. So yeah, I think that was after a long line of things, he got sacked for that one.
That was in 1979, wasn't it? He was about 35 or something, right towards the end of his career, and he's kicking around in reserve grade and stuff. So, but had an extraordinary career for a footballer in a tough era. And what did he play in? Like out of the 11 straight grand finals, he played 8 or 9 of them, didn't he? Something like that.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't matter. Like how much somebody plays. I think everyone's got a story to tell. Like all these players in the back here, they're all interesting people for me to meet and to listen to their story and have the privilege to be the one to pass it on, because it's the same as what we're talking about. Once people go, that's it. The story's gone. A lot of these stories are gone, and they get told differently by other people, or if not at all. So I think it's very important to keep the history and the stories alive, because that's actually what makes the game.
Oh,
it's the characters of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually had the pleasure of working, not directly with Billy Smith, but worked with him at Carlton and United Brews when I was a young truck offsider back in the day in like 96, 97, 98. And a lot of footballers that own brewery trucks then. So a lot of the guys work at Tui's. So I was at CUP. Billy was at CUP, but the other footballers all around the trap. See Darren Brown all out and over the place. Pretty sure John Cartwright, if I remember, he had one. Lots of different guys. And it just was like a genuine form of income after they come out of football and brutalise themselves to go into back in the day afterwards. So it's there's different. It's not like that now. They can be complete professionals and might not have to work ever again if they set their lives up properly. So
exactly, yeah.
So that was never like that back in the day. Most of the footballers did have jobs and everything like that.
Yeah.
So who's been the most impressive or interesting player that you've ever met to date?
Well, it's really hard to put a pick one or two, but like I just think about the people I've interviewed more recently, which you'll be going into the third book of doing. Like I had also Filipana here, and unfortunately I was at his funeral recently. But only a year ago, whatever it was, he came over here. He was fine, healthy, and his interview was excellent. Like it was a really, really good. And talk about people with jobs. Like he was still working as a garbage collector then up until a year ago. So and his life story. He told me all about his battle with Wally Lewis and why that was such a big and pertinent thing for him, and why he wanted to play so well against Wally Lewis. And I think the readers will be interested to find out about that. Another guy, Greg Hartley. So I met Greg a few times out at his secret hideaway, and he's a fascinating man, and he just loves rugby league. And it's quite funny how a lot of these people, especially on the internet, you put a Greg Hartley picture up and they say how he hates Parramatta, he went for Manly, but he actually went for Canterbury. So all these people saying that he did favours for Manly, it's just ridiculous. And because he got caught for that 7 tackle try, and there was a lady who rang up the TV station and she counted a little 7. But it happened a lot. Like, I think referees, there was a lot of 5 tackles and 7 tackle sets, and it was only made a big issue because it decided a fairly important game. And but he's such an interesting person. And I interviewed Kerry Hemsley recently, so I think a lot of them are like, I don't know who I could say. Like Gary Jack was a very interesting person to meet and become friends with, actually, over a bit of time. So it's just, they're all quite fascinating and interesting and people. So I can't just pick one person.
Yeah, he's got an interesting story to tell too. Both of his sons have gone and played AFL quite successfully, all off their own bat, without having to live in anyone's shadow or anything like that. It's off their own bat, and started playing AFL and went to Sydney Swans, and they're very highly successful, won AFL flags, and yeah, it's different. So
if you look at the way Gary Jack used to fly up in the air, it's they've probably got it from the dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
That natural ability, didn't you?
Yeah, oh, for sure. So rugby league is full of lots of characters and that stuff, interesting people in the game. So, and you've had the delight of meeting quite a few of them. So what would you advise anyone that's getting into collecting football cards and memorabilia? What tips would you give them about how to go about tackling it? And
buy this book.
Yeah.
Well, that's a book I did years ago. It's all the all the football cards that have ever been released. So, because talking about when I was a kid, I was getting all these old football cards off another kid at school from the 70s and 60s, and I didn't know where they came from, what year or anything. So I think that's, a book like that's very handy, because a lot of people, they come up to me 10 years after buying it saying, they still use it all the time because they check off the years and they know what they're missing and stuff like that. So if you're talking about football card collecting, that's definitely my bit of advice, buy my book. So
yeah.
I've still got heaps left, because it was a second print. I did one in 2008. But
Yeah.
the 2012 one's a lot better, but it sold less because I think people had the 2008. It's like, what do I need the 2012? But the 2012, the green one's a lot better.
Yeah, it's more updated version and got everything in it. So when were the first sets of footy cards that ever actually came out that you're aware of?
Yeah, so again, I'll go to the Bible here. But the first set, we actually had it on the show. We've got this 1910, was a Daly Messenger and James Lomas, who they had a kicking duel back in 1910 when England came over. And so they had a postcard of that. And then there was a 1948, might have been the first set. That was a Stamina Kangaroos. And then the first Scanlons, which is probably the most highly collectible, the most expensive cards, was 1963. So, with Reg Gasnier of 1963 in mint condition, you're looking at thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's hopefully my wife's not watching this, because this might be something I want to be putting in my collection down the track. So
well, that's if you can find them. Like, they're very hard to come across.
Yeah, my uncle told me when he's growing up in the 60s and 70s, so like I was born 77, he was collecting, he goes for Canterbury, so he went against his dad and his mum as well, didn't go down real well either. He's collecting footy cards in the 60s for Canterbury and that stuff. Some of their guys going through in the 70s before Steve Mortimer, any of these big name guys were even playing. So, and Canterbury, they weren't also Rans, but they were just like a sort of middle table team. And he said, I had them for years, and then I chucked them out because nobody knew what any of this stuff was worth. It got bigger in the 90s, really, once the league started to expand.
There was a big, like when Dynamic came in '94 was probably when card collecting really took off.
Yeah.
I think the part of that was how dynamic marketed. You know, it was like, I remember they had cards come out and say, "Oh, what's your collection worth?" Or you know, all these promos, and all of a sudden, that's when card values really boomed.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I think it started to reflect because around the same time I went to high school, 1990, I started to get introduced to everything. So I went from just playing basketball was just starting to come in. They'd been around for a while, but the NBL was starting to get a little bit bigger, get TV coverage, and then you go to high school and you see, NBA. So they got NBA games all the time, and baseball and all this other stuff, and gridirons. I started collecting all of that, had all sorts of different cards going, and the rugby league cards started to reflect that. So I'd have series 1 cards, and then like I said with dynamic, I started to have series 2 and all these stuff, and the star cards and all that, like sort of in line with what the other big sports in America were already doing, maybe for 20 years or whatever.
Well, they were cutting edge designs and everything, and you know, they had a lot of players as well, like in the sets. You know, having the series 1 and series 2, so they had 8 or 9 players from in series 1, and then they'd have another 8 or 9 from the same team. So it's not like nowadays. I know they only have about 8 or 9 players all up for the whole year.
Yeah,
I think it's good, you know, because you get football cards with different players that might be fringe players or something. So I think it was a good way how they did it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was.
There's the 94 one there, Red Florimo. Like it's a really nice design card, isn't it? With the fire in the background and everything. So it was, I remember when it came out, it was really, really in your face to go and get it.
Yeah, so what do you got next to him? Is that 1986 Brandon Lee card next to that?
No, that's Matt Goodwin.
Oh, Matt Goodwin, yeah.
86, and 87, Gary Worth.
Yeah. There you go. So he was a decent fullback back in the day too, and Matt Goodwin is good football. Oh, they all got stories to tell, like you just said.
Exactly.
Just hear the different bits and pieces about guys, different things they go into, and where they came from. So what's been the biggest highlight you've experienced in your life through collecting the footy cards and the sports memorabilia so far?
I think definitely the Rugby League Antiques Roadshow with Andrew Voss on the Fan, Foxtel. So, that was all pretty exciting. He just contacted me out of the blue, and before they had the NRL channel, he said, "Get your collection out. I'm going to come over and have a look." And so we did a show then, and then he said to me, "Look, we're going to get our own. He'll have his own show on Fox, and we're going to invite you on." So that was really exciting. It was a bit nervous for me because I wasn't really good at it. You know, talking to, being on TV and stuff, it was not really natural for me. Yeah. But it was, I warmed into it a bit. And it was just, well, we're both football nerds, so we'll just talk about different things and what they're worth, and try to be funny as well, and some serious items. So and we're actually filming again this year, so it is a real highlight. I think probably the other one was on Flix Productions ESPN. So that was really good. There was a Cardboard Addict show, and I represented rugby league. So they had a guy for cricket and basketball, and Dave Copley from Select was on there. So they had a real mixture of the card sort of people in Australia. And I had my rugby league collection and talking about that, and that was quite a thrill as well. And they still do highlights or reruns of that one. And I believe he's going to do one for the US sport market, which would be a lot bigger program, a lot bigger money values and things. Yeah. But they're probably the two main highlights. But probably the main thing with collecting, or for me, was being lucky enough to meet a lot of the players and talk, just to interview them and things like that. I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one highlight. I do a little bit of commentary with Clutch TV and that stuff. I've only been doing that for a few years now, and try to use Duckman TV to promote things that I'm interested in, other community people might be interested in, community-based different things. So this is relevant and resonates with a lot of people. Because my grandkids right now, they're like 4 and 6. They collect footy cards. So to me, it's a buzz, because I go, "Oh, yeah. Poppy, can you buy me footy cards?" I'll just get them like one pack at a time. I go, "Oh, I'm just going to the shops," and come back. Next thing you know, spend $100 and Mrs. is cracking it. So, but you get to do this. It's something that you can pass on through generation to generation. Hopefully I'll keep it rolling on with my grandkids, because the kids are a bit old and think it's a bit nerdy now, but just hopefully something will stay around and keep moving forward.
It's interesting that you can meet too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and yeah, I've met different football people over the years, and they all love having a chat. They like to tell you their story, and they like to hear your story as well. So about what you did and how you got involved with it. So I said to you on Chat to you last weekend. Unfortunately, we couldn't tee that one up. I was hoping to chat to a couple of guys like Jeff Bagnall and different stuff like that. I hope he'd be up for a chat. I'm pretty sure he might be, just about his career. If you had to put a dollar value on your collection at the moment, because I know you said you needed that, ESPN wanted to know all this stuff, what would the dollar value be worth on your collections at the moment?
Yeah, well, like I was telling you on that day, I actually had a spreadsheet prepared just before that Flicks Cardboard Addict show, and they asked me what the dollar value was, and I think it was about 200 and something grand, 220 grand or something. And probably the funniest part of that show was he asked everyone the same question. It's like, oh, so if somebody came to you with a brand new Lamborghini, would you swap your collection? And everyone goes, oh, I wouldn't care if the house is on fire, I'd run in and get it. Or, everyone had that same response, not for all the money in the world. But I said, yeah, I'll take Lamborghini, I'll give away the collection. So I was, I'm a bit of a sucker for beautiful sports cars like that. So,
and you can...
we got to enjoy the Lamborghini.
That's right. So one thing I suppose I really like, still being a collector now, is the part of the hunt, finding what you're after. It's like in the 90s, I had heaps of footy cards and that stuff, and threw stuff away when I was moving houses from time to time, accidentally, because I never used to keep stuff as good as I do now, and just used to have stuff in like plastic shopping bags out in the bin. And one of those bags I went in the bin had all of my cricket cards from like 1986 through to the mid 90s. So it's like, oh yeah, now I've got to go and buy all of them again. So, and yeah, have footy cards in it and everything. But similar to like what you've done, I've come across different footy cards and that from other people's collections are just gone, I don't collect anymore, but I know you have, and just pick up some bits and pieces. And I feel bad about taking it, but I wouldn't sell the stuff I got at the moment, because I collect it for a hobby and interest still. So
yeah, everyone's different. Everyone's got different motivation. Yeah,
that's right. So where do you hope you're going to roll on from here with this? So, because like you got Dan's NRL, people want to buy stuff. How's the easiest way to find it and connect with you online?
Oh, well, you can connect with me on Facebook. That seems to be the old person's platform now. All the young people on Instagram and other things that I don't even know. But Facebook, dansnrlcollectables.com. Dan's NRL Collectables, and my website's dansnrlcollectables.com. But speaking about where I'm going in the future, like I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But I've just got some really good news recently. Got a nice, beautiful letter from Mr. Peter Volandis. He's quite likes my last two books, and he's going to write the foreword for my next book. So that's very exciting, and very privileged and honoured. And also, good friend Gary Jack's going to write something at the start of that book as well. So that's my next project, is finishing off interviews for books 3, and then get that one published, and just keep on and doing the thing with Andrew Voss later in the year. So, there's plenty of good, exciting things happening for me. So,
that's nice.
Enjoy life, no Parramatta win.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people are hoping Parramatta win, so I had a big dry patch. So, unfortunately, I don't subscribe to that opinion, but that's the nature of rugby league. It makes it interesting that you've got different people with different opinions and follow different teams. That's what makes it as good as it is, I suppose, as a game. We'll finish off one last thing here, and I appreciate your time today, and having a chat to me on Duckman TV. The last thing I want to ask, so I come across back in the day, and you would have seen heaps of them, they had anomalies where players had player pictures printed with different names or the wrong names and all this sort of stuff. One big one I would put on would probably be, there's one in the 90s, I think, had Jamie Ainscough printed, or Sean Devine or something, and it wasn't them, and had the different club printed on with the cards. Are those cards in general, they're worth a little bit more or less than others because
Well, I think
of
it's
the
only.
anomalies?
I'll give you an example. So Jason Stafford's 1989 card. It's got a picture of might be Liddon or someone.
Yeah, and he's
But
pointing
so
to the crowd. Yeah.
yeah, so that particular card, there was no replacement made. So there's thousands of that one particular card. So I think for value, you need to have a shortness of supply or something. So that card's not worth any more than or any less. But there's been other times where they've made they've put out an error card and they've made a corrected card. So, you know, it depends which one there's more of. There's actually 89 again was Peter Tunks running out and he had there's a Cronulla emblem on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that error, there's actually less of that error card than the replacement because I think they caught on early and then made the correct one with the Bulldogs fast. So there was only a certain amount got out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really depends. I think it's supply and demand.
I think there was an Andrew Langford one or something like that too, and his photo with Newcastle emblem or there's something like that.
Paul Harrigan on the back.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that one I think the corrected one's hard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the mistake. So it really depends. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
Depends which one there was more of.
I managed to have 2 of those Peter Tunks ones. I kept them because I wondered one day, I wonder if this is ever going to be worth something. Maybe hold on to it down the track. I'd say from a card point of view, the best card I've got, well, probably I think would be the most valuable. I've got the Preston Campbell Dally M card that Wang says only a print like 40 or 50 or something of them all up. So some people have said to me, "Oh, can I pick one of them up?" Go, yeah, nah, mate. So nah. in 50 years
once
time,
there's serial number, you know, like I think if there's 30 or 40 printed cards, that's not, you know, there's not many. There's only 30 or 40, but it depends. Like nowadays, they make that many serial numbered cards, so I think it's sort of detracted from it.
Yeah, that's like the old cricket thing. You could buy like a framed Ashes poster or something, a Warney Ball of the Century, and then the 12th man, that's our limited edition of 512th man made a piss take of and go, oh, limited edition of 35 million or something like that.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, anyway, thanks for your time, Dan. I appreciate it. I hope to catch up with you in person in the future, and yeah, we'll keep on dealing with you online, trying to buy bits and pieces as they come along. And yeah, been an enjoyable afternoon having a chat about your collection and what you do today.
Yeah, welcome down to Cumberland Oval Bar when you're in Sydney and have a beer in my bar here. So
oh, I'd love to do that. I will.
So we could just talk about football and collectible stuff and have a few beers at the same time.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. So I'll take you up on that offer for sure. So keep on ducking, everyone. It's been a good afternoon today with Dan Payne. So put this video on a bit later on, and there's lots more interesting stuff you'll catch on Duckman TV. So thanks, Dan, for your time, and we'll see you all again next time. Bye.